Hello, dreamers and thinkers, and welcome to another episode of Undone. On today's episode, I am alone, which means I will be sharing a piece of writing. Now, this is actually also one that I wrote. I wrote this one at the start of the year. Funnily enough, it's actually dated like 4 days after Valentine's Day. But here we go. It is not a disease. It is not a death sentence. It is not the reject pile. It is here I am finding myself, my voice and my dreams. It is here that all my fears and insecurities melt away in the presence of God. I'm confident that the day love finds me, it will have a good, tidy home to live in. It will be cherished for all it adds to an already full and joyous home. When love comes, I will be ready. Until then, I will continue to enjoy every moment of being the me that is loved by God. So if the title and that intro have not given it away, on today's episode, I will be discussing singleness. Now, I just have a few disclaimers to put out there before we begin. First and foremost, whilst I am an advocate for singleness, I am not the captain over at Team Single. That is not my role description. I, like everyone else, I'm waiting for somebody's son to find me and we can be booed up. I would also appreciate it if the things said in this episode weren't held against me in the future. This is my opinion in this very moment, May 2020. Please give me the room to grow and evolve from whatever opinions I say in this episode. And also, I am not a professional. So if you take my advice, that's your business. Because once again, I am not a licensed professional. These are just my personal opinions. And with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into the good stuff. So sometime last week on my Instagram, as well as on the podcast page Instagram, which is at undone.thepodcast, I asked for you guys to send in some of your funny/embarrassing love stories with the catchphrase was "for love I," and then you would finish it off. So I am going to start off this episode by sharing some of my favorite stories that were sent in. So my personal favorite has to begin. This lovely lady said her crush at the time was, we don't really know, producing music, and he sent her some of his music and wanted her to give an opinion. Sis said she absolutely loved it and she had it on repeat, and she did not like a single song he had sent. And I was like, the worst thing about that is not only did you lie, but it was such an extravagant lie. Like, it was so unprovoked. You didn't have to say you had his music on repeat. This is also another one of my personal faves because I feel like I thought this was genius and I don't know why I hadn't tried it myself. But she said she downloaded the music on her Spotify playlist and acted surprised when he was liking her taste in music. And I thought that was genius. Another one we got in, I can relate to this one because I'm a tall gal. She said she didn't wear her favorite heeled boots because she didn't want to be taller than him. In which case, I'm like, girl, wear your heels. Pat that man on the head. Another one was, oh my God, delivered Mr. X a gift for every hour of the day on his birthday. And if that is not dedication, I don't know what is. Someone else said they jumped into the deep end of the pool even though they knew they couldn't swim. People are risking lives for love, guys. They are risking lives for love. Someone else said that they made a resume and cover letter for a love interest. And all I could say is that could never be me. Like, that just could never be me. What do I look like making you a cover letter and resume? Like, at that point, sis, no. Someone said that in high school they used to sleep with their phone on loud so that they could hear their 15-year-old boyfriend texting them. And if that's not madness, like absolute madness, I don't know what is. I really don't. Another one was they called in sick because they had started talking late at night and the conversation went until the early hours of the morning and they had work in the morning. Oh my goodness. Now, this one I'm about to share had me absolutely gobsmacked. Sis said, for my ex-boyfriend who was in the Marines, I wrote him a letter every day for a year while he was away. I also mailed him a Bible that I had highlighted scriptures to help him out and wrote little love notes on a majority of the pages. I also glued pictures of us together on the blank pages. He has it, even though he is engaged to the girl he cheated on me with. What? What kind of madness? Absolute madness. And then I figure we should probably end on a nice, wholesome note. This one said, attended church with him and never looked back. Don't we just all love a really cute, sweet, wholesome love story? And that concludes that episode, series, I don't really know what to call it, segment. That's the word I'm looking for. That concludes that segment of For Love I, which leads me into the purpose of today's episode, which is, for love, can we choose singleness, please? Can we all just collectively decide that we're going to choose singleness? And that's going to sound like an oxymoron, but when I say choose singleness, I mean instead of letting singleness just happen to you, like it just be a state, relationship status that you happen to find yourself in, how about you choose to intentionally be single, to take some time out in your life to focus on you, your passions, your goals, your purpose, making friendships, making memories. I don't know. What is the fascination with being in a relationship? I personally have never understood it. Now, when I say I've never understood it, I don't mean I have never wanted to be in a relationship kind of thing. Like, I think it is important to state that it is normal to want to be, like, to have the desire to want to be in a relationship, to want to have a family one day or get married or whatever the case might be. Like, that is a very normal desire. But I think when we take that desire and we start to obsess over it, and it affects how we live and we function in terms of in our lives and the things that we do, because it's like, oh no, I don't want to make it difficult to like find someone who will want me or whatever the case is. I'm like, girl, guy, stop that. Live your life on high volume. Do not turn down your life for nobody, okay? Because essentially the person that you want, like, I mean, we all look at like Will and Jada or like Jay-Z and Beyonce, and we're like, oh, relationship goals or whatever, but none of those people were living a quiet, safe life so that the love of their life would come and find them. So I just think, first of all, let's get rid of that notion. But I've been seeing this come up a lot lately on like YouTube and Instagram and stuff, is that people are wondering how to continue dating, and how it's affecting like their ability to meet new people, like having to be in isolation and the pandemic. And I just think that's really a crazy thing to have at the forefront of our minds during this time. I think there are so many other things that we could be working on. I think having to self-isolate or social distance or whatever the case may be is quite a unique situation to be in, and it allows us time to think and sit with our thoughts. It allows us time to actually just slow down and not experience life at a million miles per hour, which is what we're used to. And in that space, you're able to see things from a different perspective. And I feel like that's such a great space to be able to grow or to be able to nurture wounds that you didn't realize hadn't actually healed, to be able to write down dreams that you have, things that you didn't realize that you wanted to do or were a desire or you wanted to accomplish, until you actually had this time to be like, oh my gosh, I'm actually really passionate about this, or oh my gosh, I'd really like to do this. So I just am of the idea that like dating is really not our biggest concern right now. I think being able to navigate a really difficult time that no one necessarily has a rule book for is really our concern, and to be able to not only survive this, but to be able to thrive in this space. to focus on the relationships that you already have during this time, now that it's not like now that your relationships aren't of convenience, like you don't see them maybe you don't see them at work because you're having to work from home. Maybe you usually play sports and now you don't see those people when you go to the sporting clubs, or you go to the gym, or when you go to church, whatever the case might be. Now you're having to be intentional about those relationships that are in your life, and you're having to assess whether you actually even want those relationships in your life. Because sometimes relationships are easy to have until you have to put in work, and then you're like, oh, actually, no, I don't want to put in work into this relationship. So yeah, I just think that's a really important area that we could be focusing on right now. And I also think that's another thing that I think has made being single so easy for me, is that, so easy was a bit of an exaggeration, but I genuinely enjoy being single because my friendships and the other relationships I have in my life are just so fulfilling, and I find so much joy in them. I feel so loved and accepted. I feel like I can truly be myself in those relationships. And so for me, it's like I already know how to cultivate good relationships. I know how to have long-lasting relationships. That's another thing. If you cycle through like best friends and they last like maximum 2 years and you're on to the next one, you need to be able to look at who are the people that you're picking to be friends in your life, who, like, what breaks down the relationships. Are you unable to communicate unmet expectations? Are you unable to conflict resolve? Anyway, are you unable to like work through conflict? Do you just get tired really easily? Are you unable to grow with people? What is that? That is a good thing to have to look at. And I don't think you need to be in a relationship to learn all those things. I think I've had most of my friends like that are my inner circle for, I want to say, at a minimum 4 years. And in 4 years, you're gonna get over the the lovey-dovey, like, oh my god, that's my best friend, oh my god, we get along, oh my god, they're so funny, oh my god, you're so pretty, no, you're pretty, look at your sense of style. Like, you get over that pretty quickly, and then it's having to be like, hey sweetie, so you do this thing, have you ever considered how that might be toxic? Have you or vice versa, they'll pull you up on something and you'll have to be like, oh damn, I never realized that was a thing. So I think being able to cultivate good relationships of any kind outside of a romantic relationship is really a good place to start, and is one way that you can be intentional in your singleness, but also just a good life skill to have. I also think another reason that people obsess over singleness is because they're looking for someone to love the parts of them that they find unlovable. And I think this will be super highlighted during this time, where it's like you don't have people to constantly affirm you or to constantly tell you look pretty or you look good or whatever. Like, I mean, there's social media, so then there's that. But it's during this time that you're realizing, oh, maybe I don't love certain parts about myself. And it's easy for me to silence those voices in my head or those thoughts or whatever the case is, because I'm constantly around people. I constantly throw myself into social situations. And it's like, no, another person can actually not love your insecurities to security. Like, you need to own your insecurities, because at the end of the day, depending on what the insecurity is, it may actually not be anything that you can change. And so now it's just like, okay, I'm going to have to own it. I'm going to have to love it. I need to accept it. And I can't expect that someone else is going to love that part of me for me. Like, that is our job. And I think something that has really helped in terms of like insecurities and all that kind of stuff for me is my relationship with God. So like, God will just be like, honey, how you see yourself is totally not at all how I see you. Yes, this is how God speaks to me. This is how I hear him. But he'll be like, that is not at all how I see you. Like, I think you're the most beautiful. I think you're the most precious. I just hold you in such a high regard. And you were so difficult on yourself. And he's just like, like this person that you're seeing, all these flaws that you're seeing, I don't see them like that. And you need to not be so tough on yourself. And I think it's been so much easier for me to accept those things that I consider flaws or things that I'm insecure about, because I'm like, no, God doesn't make, like, he doesn't make rough drafts. Everything that he makes is beautifully and wonderfully made, and it says so in his word, and he genuinely believes that. And so it's like, I am discrediting the God that I love and that made me by picking at all these flaws and pulling myself apart. And it's such a cliche, but it's so true. How you love yourself sets the standard for how others are able to love you. And I think it also goes for in reverse. When you are loving someone else, when you are in a secure place, you will realize that it's actually not helpful or healthy for me to try and love someone to wholeness or try and love every part of them on their behalf. You'll realize that it's actually more beneficial for you to love them, but help them walk through that journey of learning to love the parts of themselves that they also find unlovable. And then, guys, this has got to be what I think is the most important part about being single. I think a lot of people are thinking that getting into a relationship or being married or whatever the case may be will somehow suddenly give their life purpose. And I'm here to tell you, your life had purpose before you ever entered it into any relationship. Like, your life has purpose outside of the relationships that you are a part of. And so I just think being single is such a great time, especially if it's like romantically, because I have heard of, like, we heard the crazy things that people did for love. Can you imagine the places that people aren't moving to for love? Can you imagine the degrees, the jobs that people aren't taking for love? Like, no. I think it is really important that you establish a vision for your life by yourself. You get an idea of where you feel your life is going. And I know we all like do vision boards or like write out 5-year, 10-year plans. And it's like, obviously at the end of the day, we have some control over what happens in our lives, but we don't really have full control. Like, I don't think anyone saw Corona coming and just completely shaking up 2020. But at least when you have a vision for your life and you can see where you're going, you have an idea of the things that you want to achieve, the person that you want to be, it makes it so much easier to be able to weed out people when it comes to dating, because you're not just dating the first person that says they like you or they find you attractive or says sweet things, is whispering sweet nothings. Like, you're not going to date the first person that does that, because you're going to look and be like, okay, do we even like the same things? Do we believe the same things about life, about family, about love, about humans, about, I don't know, random stuff? Like, do we even align in that way? Are we going in the same place? Like, are we going to the same places? Like, do we have similar ideas of where we would like to be in the future? Like, you might find someone who's like, no, I'm just really comfortable buying my house, working my job and having my kids. And there is someone for that person. And then there are other people who are like, I want to be traveling all the time. And there is someone for that person. And so it's like, but if you don't have an idea of that, you will try and fit yourself into the mold of the other person. So if you're the kind of person who's like, I want stability, you will try, if you don't know that about yourself, you will try and be like, okay, no, I'm going to be adventurous and outgoing, and sure, we can make it work. And that won't work. And if you're the opposite and you like adventurous and outgoing, but you haven't taken the time to learn this about yourself to create a vision for your life, you will be like, oh no, I can do the stable thing. Yes, we can live here forever. And you'll find that you're miserable. And it's not because the person forced you to do anything, but it's because you didn't take the time during your singleness to figure out what it is that you wanted out of life. I personally am like, God, where are we going? What purpose have you put me on this earth for? What is my life supposed to achieve? What is the general direction all that kind of stuff. And that is kind of just what I go based off. And so there are some few things that I know about what my future is going to look like. And I'm just like, if someone tries to whisper sweet nothings and they just don't like have similar feelings about those things, and I'm like, yeah, sorry, not about to waste my time. The final thing I wanted to discuss in regards to singleness is being lonely versus being alone. Just because you're single doesn't mean you're lonely. And it shouldn't actually mean that you're lonely. I think if you're single and you feel lonely, there are some things that you need to address and you need to work on. So being alone is basically what being single is. Like, I am alone. I don't have a significant other, etc., etc. Whereas loneliness is like, I would ask, what do your relationships look like with your family, with your do you have friends? Do you have mentors? What are your relationships in your life looking like that you are that you are feeling lonely? And I say this because that could also be a hindrance when you do eventually get into a relationship, because you now want this person to be your everything. You want them to be your significant other. You want them to fit the role of whatever your family was supposed to fit. You want them to be all your schedule, and that is just very demanding and very unrealistic. Esther Perel, who I absolutely love, is this like relationship psychologist or whatever, and she speaks of how like it's so insane how when it comes to friendships or when it comes to family, we can understand that, oh, that's my friend that I talk to about cooking, that's my friend that we discuss fashion, whatever the case may be. Like, obviously there are other areas that you agree and align on, but it's like, oh, that's who I go to if I want a new recipe, if I want to talk about like whatever the case may be. But when it comes to romantic relationships, people are trying to get everything out of their partner, and it's like, it's not healthy to try and expect one person to be able to fulfill so many different needs inside of you, and it's also just unrealistic. And so I would say, if you are feeling lonely, you need to actually go back and look at the relationships that you have and maybe start cultivating new relationships so that you don't feel lonely. And in that, I should say, if you are feeling lonely, also don't expect your friends to fill up your entire schedule. I think you need to get better at just sitting with your thoughts, sitting with yourself, spending quality time with yourself. I think that would also be a really good place to start, because if you feel lonely, no relationship is gonna take that away, because you will always be expecting them to fulfill that need inside of you to not feel lonely. And I think that is unfair and asking for too much, and probably will put a strain on your relationships. People can only take that kind of weight for so long. So yeah. And I just also wanted to touch on something that I previously mentioned, which is the idea that anyone who would come along and just show you attention, you would jump at the chance of, because you're trying to not be single. And my friend recently posted this on her Instagram. She found it from, I don't know where she found it from. But anyway, the quote says, "When you view singleness as a prison, anyone who takes interest in you is seen as a bail bond." And I absolutely love that, because it's like, also singleness isn't the place where you're like, okay, tick, I've got purpose, tick, I have friendships, like, I don't know what else you would want to tick off your list, and then be like, okay, I'm ready, let's move me out of, like, I'm ready to leave prison, I've been on good behavior for 7 years, or whatever the case may be. Like, that's just not how it works. I think you should genuinely enjoy being single and lean into that and learn to be content in that season of singleness, so that you can enjoy your season of being in a relationship that much more. And also so that you're not jumping at every person who shows you attention. Like, you actually have standards, which I think some people do not have standards because they're just trying to find a boyfriend. Not like, that's a conversation for another day. And on that note, that concludes today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for listening, and I will see y'all. You'll hear me. I don't know. You'll hear me next week. Bye.